The American president is in trouble. Barack Obama has been trying to persuade Congress to pass a bill called the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, or TTIP, which would expand trade between the US and countries bordering the Pacific Ocean, especially Asia. Many opposed him in a crippling defeat to his international trade agenda. He only made progress thanks to support from Republicans rather than from his own Democrat Party. A similar agreement, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, known as TTIP, has been shown to have implications for food safety, jobs, money, privacy, and even democracy. Some think the US government has withheld important information from its own citizens. TTIP has elements which are very undemocratic, and its implications would stretch way beyond the current presidency. Meanwhile, Obama's problems with the loss of support from his own side for the Trans-Pacific equivalent of the Transatlantic deal have caused some to say he is a lame duck president. The policy he hoped would be his legacy has instead become a serious setback to his credibility. Why are some Republican politicians helping a Democrat president with trade policy? How embarrassing would continued rejection of that trade policy be to him? And to what extent is Obama becoming a lame duck president? These are the simple questions we sought to answer. And we began with a very simple question. What do you know about TTIP? Here's what the British and the American public said.
No, I don't know anything about it. Definitely not, I don't. No.
TTIP? Nothing. It's something to do with the internet, the computers, I think. But not sure. So not now.
TTIP, nothing.
It has something to do with the Pacific, and I think the president wanted to have it going on.
Absolutely nothing.
Have you ever heard of it at all?
No. TTIP. Nope.
TTIP, nothing.
Have you ever heard of it at all?
Nope.
If you had to guess what it is, what would you guess it is?
Maybe a company giving some advice on how to use tea in new ways, maybe. Or maybe if it's a golfing, then tips on how to use the tea in golfing. That's what comes to my mind anyway.
Nothing.
I know absolutely nothing about TTIP.
Have you ever heard of it?
Nope, not until today.
If you had to guess what it was, what would you think?
I'd like to think it was a cup of tea, but that's probably because I fancy one right at the moment.
It seems to me like it's a bad thing because they keep it secret.
We invited our experts to explain what TTIP is and what it does.
Well, I work as a trade campaigner for Global Justice Now, so I make it my business to find out about TTIP. For me, I know quite a bit, I'd say. I'm not the complete expert, but the problem is TTIP is a mystery to many people. There's not enough in the media about it, there's not enough reports on what it means, and the government don't talk about it. So basically it's being done in secret, and this is what I'm working to try and uncover and to make it popular, the knowledge about what's happening in TTIP, because it's a very disturbing development really, and we've got to try and stop it.
TTIP means the Transatlantic Trade Investor Partnership. It came about at the end of the Cold War, the 1990s. There was a huge movement to increase trade with the US, and then it kind of died down. And since the 1990s, we've had very low trade tariffs between the US and Europe, averaging about 3%. So we don't really need trade. We already have very good trading relationships with the US. But what TTIP really does, it doesn't really bring down pre-existing trade barriers because they're already too low. We already have a massive 800 million market with the EU and the US. We already have zero inflation. So the benefits that are promised by TTIP are not really for the people, because what it promises is lower regulation. So you no longer have the minimum wage, you no longer have maternity rights, you no longer have workers' rights, minimum hours. So all the benefits are really for the big bosses, for corporate structures. And what it really does, the big thing that TTIP does, because it doesn't bring down the trade tariffs, what it really does is just simply bring down any type of regulation.
We wondered to what extent the British and American governments have told the public about TTIP, the Transatlantic Partnership, and whether the public feel they've been told enough. Here's what they said.
No, I'm not satisfied, no. I think I know what TTIP is now, I'm thinking about it, but no, you don't hear a lot about it in the press, I don't think, or from the government. Yeah.
Only what I read in the New York Times.
Obviously, from the first answer, no, I don't know anything about it, so I need more information. So
definitely not. They haven't made. I mean, the government in general hasn't made a lot of things to inform about a lot of like the people in general. So I mean, if they were to inform us about this, I think it should be spoken about in Parliament, and maybe it should be also the people. It should be. I mean, the newspapers all should be trying to say what positives of this trade agreement, and in general, what how will it benefit the general population. I think would be a good example of how, if they were to talk about it, these are the things they should touch upon, really.
I think it's pretty obvious that they don't tell you anything about that, and I'm not satisfied, but I think that what are you going to do? It's the government.
No, I don't think so. I study international relations, so I think that if anyone was going to make an effort to tell anyone, they would have told me.
That I'm not satisfied with, because I think that sometimes that, the government, sometimes, I mean, we ain't always clear with what we need to hear. Basically, that's what I think.
To what extent do our experts feel that these governments have informed the public about TTIP? And is this satisfactory?
We're not being told enough about TTIP. Basically, what's happening is they're calling it a trade deal. They're saying that this is just, making trade more easy between the EU and the United States of America. What's actually happening is there's a grab for power by corporations. And our governments are currently negotiating away democracy and handing power over to corporations. I'll give you an example. In Canada, there's a moratorium, a 1-year ban on fracking. This is the process of getting oil and gas out of the ground by pumping chemicals and gas in there. And basically, there's a 1-year ban on fracking under a river and in Quebec. That's been introduced because they're concerned about safety. Now, an American-based company is suing the Canadian government for billions and billions of dollars, and they've won. In Australia, they're introducing plain packaging on cigarettes as a health issue, as a health measure. And now, Philip Morris, the makers of Marlboro cigarettes, are suing the Australian government to try and stop this. So everywhere there are cases we're seeing under similar trade deals where corporations are throwing their weight at governments and undermining democracy. This should alarm everyone.
No, I mean, we don't hear anything. There's no political debate on TTIP. And that's across the board, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in America. In America, it's even worse. The White House are even trying to get some kind of special procedure through, whereby even Congress don't debate it. It's just like fast-tracked, ran through. And these are such huge changes that affect everything, like everything what we eat. I mean, in America, American chicken in Europe is not chicken. Biologically, we don't call it a chicken. It's called another physical entity. The makeup in America is actually poison. The levels of lead in there and other toxins, it would be illegal to sell in the UK or Europe. And similarly, the GMO modified crops, bread is not bread. They call the FDA forces schools to adopt pizza as a vegetable, one of their 5 a day. So pizza and tomato ketchup are officially, from their health, the equivalent of Department of Health and Safety, are vegetables. So you have a complete distortion of things that are good for us. And this massive corporate agenda in the US, which forces these very anti-democratic, very anti-public interest kind of things through society and through government. That's also on the tables with TTIP in Europe as well. And that's why there's very little discussion about it.
TTIP is widely condemned for putting the public's food safety, jobs, money privacy, even democratic rights at risk. So why do Republicans and President Obama himself seem so keen to make TTIP a reality? We asked the public.
Well, I think that politics in the US are shifting quite a lot, and usually because there's not a huge difference between the Democrats and the Republicans on a lot of issues. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily unprecedented and not exactly surprising, but probably quite an issue, especially for Democratic politics. If his people voted him to be a Democrat, and he's acting like a Republican, I suppose. The base of the issue.
I really don't know. I really don't know, man. I can't answer that.
I'm going to grasp here, but I'd imagine there's quite a lot in the States going about territorial taxes and stuff like that. So I imagine there's something about if they bring back jobs into America, there'll be some reduction in taxes or something like that. So maybe the spin is that way, I'm not really sure, but yeah, it sounds wrong anyway.
Well, it'd be beneficial for the Republicans, obviously, to the point where they do anything to get it through, I guess, yeah.
Why do you think Democrats might not be so keen on it?
Less capitalist stance than Republicans, perhaps. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because it's a big conspiracy. I mean, no one in the government cares about us, including the Democrat.
I'm sure someone on that side is going to benefit from it. That's normally why people, particularly politicians, are keen on deals.
I think for the profit, really. I think if any sort of trade deal commands a lot of profit, and if they can find a way where this profit will be then distributed to the party and to the general those supporters, then I think, of course, it would be beneficial for them, really.
Because they want fair trade and they want our country to send things out.
Can our experts explain why President Obama and a contingent of Republicans are so supportive of this trade agreement, despite the threat it presents to food safety, jobs, money, privacy, and democracy?
TTIP is about an ideology. It's about neoliberalism. So basically what we're seeing, and we've seen it since the days of Thatcher and Reagan, what's happened is that more power has been handed over to business. Governments have made themselves smaller and given their powers away because they believe in the market. They believe in market forces solving our problems and making the world a better place. Now we see in the UK how this isn't happening. We just have to take a look at our railways to understand that this is, our prices are sky high. The service hasn't improved. So basically, this is an ideological thing, and that's why we see, especially Conservatives in the UK and Republicans in the United States, saying, right, let's just hand over power to corporations because the market will provide. And that's what we're trying to stop, because we absolutely disagree with that. We believe in looking after the vulnerable in society, making sure everyone's got an equal chance, and making sure there's a welfare state for people. And that's not what the market provides. So that's the clash that's going on at the moment. There's a difference in ideologies, and they're trying to give things away, and we can't stand for it.
Well, the Republican issue is separate. Republicans and the right wing, they always say we want small government, but they're always very pro-corporate. So that's why they support the arms industry. That's why so the whole notion between government being small, it has its origin, like this year in England, we're celebrating the 800th year of the Magna Carta. Historically, this was an incredible event. The first time people said power must be represented by interests that reflect them. The first time big controlling power was reduced, that human individual rights were promoted as being the basis for power, ushering in democracy. These were even more forcefully brought in with the French and American Revolution, which brought in the idea of individual rights. This is against, big state power. What happened in the late 19th century was that the US Supreme Court began interpreting individual rights, so the right to free expression, the right to be free from arbitrary interference by government, gave these individual, very powerful rights to big corporations. So corporates had the same rights as individuals, as human rights. And this is what is happening in America.
Obama's fellow Democrats have voted against him on pre-TTIP legislation. How embarrassing is this for Obama? We gave the public the chance to comment.
I think that's very embarrassing. I think if your own party doesn't agree with you, I mean, you could even look at with the Liberal Democrats and then Nick Clegg as well. I mean, for them to have had so many seats and then to have nothing in the end and to lose the majority, it's embarrassing. I mean, for Obama himself, I mean, I saw his presidential campaign when he just became into president and made a lot of promises. Obamacare didn't really pull through as well as it should have done. But I mean, in general, it's embarrassing for any leader to lose supporters and then go to their rivals for support. It's not good.
I think it's mighty embarrassing.
Well, he's powerless against with his own party. So, yeah, he's basically a puppet head. He doesn't have any power. So, yeah, on with the traitor, I suppose, in some respects. Yeah.
It would be embarrassing, yes. If you can't get, like you said, you can't get support from your own party on something as important as this, then yes, that's not good.
I think that's very embarrassing because I think that Obama did a great job, and I think that you know, a lot of people hate to see such a powerful man like him with such dominancy and power.
I'd imagine it's hugely embarrassing for him across his own party. It probably shows a weakness in his power of controlling the party. There's probably very good reasons why people have voted against him.
It might be embarrassing for him, but it's the government. Like, there may be other shit going on. I'm sure there's like random friendships he's made. Or maybe there's money in it. It's always money in politics, right? I don't know what's the deal, but I don't trust the Democrats any more than I trust the Republicans, so.
Do our experts have a view on the level of embarrassment President Obama has incurred as a result of opposition from his own Democrat colleagues to pre-TTIP legislation?
Obama came into office with great hope. You know, the first black president of the United States of America, a Democrat, someone who's experienced in community campaigning, and people pinned their hopes to him. But basically, he is off the business world. He is off, you know, the neoliberal idea of encouraging corporations to take over. So it's embarrassing for him that a lot of his people in his party are opposed to him. And to his shame, he really should be on the other side. He should be opposing this stuff. But he's trying to push it through as his final act as president to try and leave a legacy. So he's reaching a big amount of opposition. The same is happening in Europe. There's a petition at the moment with over 2.2 million signatures on it opposing TTIP. So there's you know, obviously a huge opposition, and I think it's not certain that this will be agreed, and it's certainly not definite that this is going to go through. So there's I think Obama's in a very difficult situation now, but it's a situation of his own making.
I think he's just inundated with embarrassment. He must become immune to it. I mean, he came into power promising Guantanamo. He came, you know, health reforms. All of these he gives up really easily and says, okay. So it seems like he came in on the you know, I'm for people's, and at that time in America, after they had Bush presiding over the Gulf War, you know, America needed something that represented real people's interests, and Obama looked like this. But right now, he's just not acting like that. So, and it's not raising many eyebrows, the fact that Obama's doing exactly what Angela Merkel's doing, exactly what Cameron's doing, and why his office himself is railroading, you know, this piece of, this TTIP through Congress, trying to avoid any democratic overview.
It is claimed that President Obama is increasingly being seen as a lame duck president. Do you agree? That's the question we asked the public.
To be honest, I haven't really read up on American politics lately. I just finished exams. But I think that to a degree it can be a good thing. to take matters into your hands. I mean, he has been elected by the public to do a job, and if he thinks that he's taking their interests at heart when he's doing that, then it could be a good thing, but it does largely depend on what policies he's pursuing and what interests he is sort of serving.
I think he's good. I think he's someone to support. I think he's obviously, no one's perfect, as people are always going to have their opponents, but I think he's better than the alternatives.
Absolutely. And I mostly agree with that except for Clinton, most of them have been pretty lame presidents. So.
What do you mean?
I don't feel like I've ever been represented by a president, but I liked Clinton. I don't know why. Everyone kind of liked Clinton. But I feel like Obama was definitely a fad president. It was like, yeah, everyone get behind Obama, and then he didn't do anything for anyone. But what president keeps their promises,
So it seems, at least. But I mean, you can always gain influence back by doing right things and pulling the right PR stunts. So it's fluctuating thing.
I agree. He's been a lame duck president since the day he was elected, because the opposition party said they would not approve any legislation which was introduced for the people of this country.
I mean, I don't really know much about American politics in general, but I think from what is shown here in the UK, you can see that he has lost a lot of influence, and the fact that he is sending his wife abroad to do his job, and and the fact that she's got more support than he has, pretty much shows the tide of things. I mean, if you see Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton now, Hillary Clinton's running for the presidential campaign. She has more support than he had when he was running for president. So you can really see now that the wives are doing a lot better than their counterparts.
We invited our experts to consider the extent to which Obama is becoming labelled a lame duck president.
I think every president goes through a lame duck period towards the end of their term in office, where they can't command the respect or the support of their own organisation, and their opponents, the other party in Senate and in Congress, want to give them a hard time, and everyone's vying for the next president and lining things up. But Obama will always be remembered as the first black president, and that is important. So yeah, every president goes through a lame duck period, and he's going to suffer for it. I hope he suffers, because he's doing the wrong thing at the moment. But at the end of the day, I think people, despite the fact that he's let people down, he's disappointed people, he's led to the deaths of people in the Middle East, we shouldn't let him off that. But it's still significant that he's a black president and that things have changed in America.
There's a debate, isn't there? Is he so shackled by American corporate power? I mean, is this going to happen with any Democratic president? Or was he putting on the show of being liberal and left-wing? I think more people, unfortunately, are agreeing with that he, he's always been there with special interests at heart, but he needed to portray this in order for special interests to have their man out in the first place. He is looking like a lame duck, unfortunately, yeah.
Despite President Obama's efforts, TTIP is being seen as a dangerous and unethical trade policy devised by corrupt politicians and capitalists in the European Union and the United States. That's why Obama is receiving support from Republicans rather than from his own Democrat side, and he seems to be losing the argument. Failure in trying to implement TTIP is a sign of his fading authority and divisions within his own party. What started as a presidential effort to create a new trade agreement could end as a signal that Obama has become a lame duck president.